Hey, how you doing, Sammy? Happy birthday.
Thanks so much, hon. How are you?
Good. What's going on?
No, is everything okay with your ear? Did you have another check since I saw you?
You know what? Something came up. So my partner at work got alerted that his colleague had positive COVID that he directly works with. So both of us went and got tested yesterday, and we're waiting because I've been in direct contact with him, and he's been in extended exposure with someone who's positive. So I canceled my other ear-related meeting
Yeah.
because I'm waiting to hear back on my test. So that is unfortunate. I don't have any symptoms necessarily, but it's kind of hard for me to determine what a symptom would be, considering.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah, so.
When are they supposed to have the results for you?
3 to 5 days like normal. So I got tested yesterday. Yeah, or 3 to 4 days. But that's good, right? Because the rapid ones I've heard aren't even reliable.
Yeah, I know. It just bothers me that they still don't have, something even quicker and reliable.
That's both, I know.
It's a long time for people to have to limit their experiences. So, I'll keep my fingers crossed.
Yeah.
No word on the hearing test yet?
Well, no, I canceled that today. So because.
Oh, okay. I thought that's what you had. Okay.
I did have it today, but I said no. I didn't want to go into it because I don't. Yeah. So anyway, what's going on otherwise?
Okay, so I wanted to touch base with you because Daniel, you know how much I very much appreciate your technical expertise and all the wonderful work you're doing. But I wanted to talk to you because I received a call from Joe today, telling me about the conversation you had with him earlier today. That I'm not sure you're aware, but it made him very uncomfortable.
She did not make me aware of that.
And I'll explain that in a second. But I also want to mention that I also received a call from Brendan on Friday, which we can talk about as well. And what I want you to hear from me is that, in case it's not obvious, I am completely supportive of you and want to be completely in your corner. But I am finding that in just the short time that we've worked together, I now have had 3 people from our little office, that would be Catherine and Brendan and Joe, each talking to me about interactions they've had with you that have been problematic. Now, that's something that we need to work on because I want you to be completely successful. And the challenge is that no matter how awesome your work is, if we're continuing to have these types of situations, it just makes it impossible to get things done. And it's also taking a lot of my time to sort of have these interventions and dealing with the interpersonal pieces. So I wanted to share with you what Joe was very uncomfortable about is that he felt that you were putting him in an awkward position, asking him to somehow sort of speak on your behalf or attend this meeting today on your behalf to be on your side. As though, first of all, this isn't even an adversarial meeting, but Joe felt it was completely inappropriate to be speaking negatively about Brendan, saying to Joe, who's not even involved in this, that Brendan is being overly controlling, and he felt that you were really negative towards about Brendan, and it made him feel very uncomfortable. So that's one piece. There's no reason to be enlisting other people in the office. If you're feeling that there are issues, I'm really the person, or the person you're having issues with are the people who should be involved. There's no reason to be enlisting other people.
Can I respond to this or not?
If you just let me just share with you where I'm coming from here, and then you'll have ample time. On Friday, I got a call from Brendan, who explained to me that last week, after I had given you the okay to purchase whatever you wanted, that you had met with him to, I guess, ask for his ideas or his thoughts on it. And his take on that was that he suggested perhaps you meet with Surratt and someone else from the computing office to see, since it's not Brendan's area. According to Brendan, he set up the appointment, the meeting for review, and then to his surprise, you sent out that email explaining that you had made the decision that you did, and that he had this meeting set up that he set up on the behalf of, trying to support with you coming to him. And then he wrote to you twice and didn't hear back. And that he ended up having this meeting without you. It put him in an awkward situation since he now had a meeting with Surratt, and I forget who the other person was.
Alex.
About this when you had made it, this was set up, and you then sent out that email and kind of left him hanging. Now, I will listen to your side. I didn't make a big deal out of it. That's why you didn't hear from me. But you can see what's happening from my perspective as a manager is that I've now had 3 people in the office contact me about these types of, friction, issues of not responding or causing sort of this triangulation, even if I think back with whatever the challenges were with Catherine, our relationships irreparably harmed. There seems to be a heightened level of drama that is happening in these interactions that is really problematic. So I'm listening to you, and I will say again, I am doing my absolute, complete best to support you, and want to support you, and want to see you succeed.
Okay, well, so I can say, for one thing, I didn't think that the Catherine incident irreparably, in your words, harmed anything.
Those aren't my words.
I thought you just said that.
You used. Those are words that you had said to Catherine at the time when you contacted her. During that whole not positive experience, you had said to her, our relationship is irreparably harmed when you started, and we talked about it. I wrote it down from our conversation.
Well, that was maybe a misquote. I didn't mean to imply that it was necessarily. I meant to say that I didn't want it to be, or something to that effect. But what if you were there to touch on that again, I want to say that I felt that I was negotiating with Catherine in a very deliberated, very positive, and whether or not that was her experience, it was the way I approached it from my side. And that, again, I'm not sure how these conversations are coming back to you, if they're being recanted differently.
Let me just interject on that one. If you recall, I held a meeting with the 2 of you for the specific purpose of trying to intervene because there was friction between you and Catherine. So what I'm trying to point out to you is, from a manager's standpoint, there have been now 3 people in this office who have come to me,
Sami, please,
to talk about these interactions.
But can I please respond to this? And if you'll listen to me, I feel like you're not listening to me, because what I'm trying to tell you, that's a good example. So for that project, I completed an exemplary, beautiful, interactive experience for her class on time, ahead of time, with little to no support from her, because she didn't meet with me really much to prepare for it. I did it in about a month, and I set it up and had it ready for her class, which I can't fathom why I'm being in any way criticized for doing such a great job on that, when the thing that I brought up as when you talk about conflict, the conflict is exactly that. Suddenly, for some reason, Catherine was being very aggressive to me when I did her work for her on time, like there was no delay really. It was a very tight schedule, and I turned it around very quickly, and it was really well received, and the course went really well. And I'm very confused when then this becomes something that reflects poorly on me. So Catherine was very aggressive with me about meeting her expectations when I tried my best to meet her expectations in a very collaborative way. When with the complexity of working virtually, meaning that I have to do some work that she can't just pop in my office and like look over my shoulder at, like it was there were new things about that. Now, that being said, this meeting doesn't have enough time to allot, but I feel like my relationship with Catherine is not irreparably harmed. I did not mean to say that it was, and I feel it's very unfortunate if we look at that very positive project as anything but positive. And
Daniel, may I just jump in here for a second? I want you to just remember the time frame here. I met with you and Catherine because she came to me talking about what you had contacted her and said, about how upset you were and using the phrase about irreparable harm and so on. I held that meeting and tried to work with the two of you to look at both of your contributions to what seemed to be.
And we did, and we moved forward.
We did, and that's fine. That's fine.
So we moved forward. So that's all.
Right, but Daniel, here you are. You're defending to me right now, and I'm trying to tell you that I am seeing a pattern.
But
because I'm now seeing three people in the office who are. This is now the third person who is coming to me, Daniel. Nobody comes to me about anybody else in the office.
And I don't know why. Then, Sami, please forgive me for interrupting you, but I feel attacked right now, and I feel unfairly attacked because I am trying to be a good collaborator. I was a good collaborator with Catherine. The miscommunication occurred for sure, which we resolved through a meeting, and we're back on track now trying to move that project forward. Now, with regards to the other situation, I don't know how to tell you this more clearly, but I have told you this from the initial meetings I had with Brendan, that he has, and this is very unfair. I find this very unfair, and I will tell you emotionally right now, I am hurt that this is the way this is turning, because I have tried very hard to work with Brendan. I have told you that he has been relentlessly negative to me. He has yelled at me, and somehow all of these negative interactions that I have not been the proponent of have now come back to me as if I have caused them. So in regards to the last week, I will tell you what happened. So last week, I met with Brendan and you 2 weeks ago. It was 2 weeks ago Monday. You had you proposed to us that you had approved computing purchases. I emailed afterwards saying, I think this is a good idea. What do you think? He got back to me saying he didn't like that idea at all. He didn't want to get those. So we moved forward. I said in emails with him and Penelope, please make some suggestions. If you don't think these are the best idea, we'll look at some other options. I'm happy to discuss. A week passed, and last Wednesday, before I met with you, this is why your timeline is not accurate. Thursday is when I met with you, and you gave me the go-ahead. Wednesday, I met with Brennan for an hour and a half, and he again negatively said, there's no way you're going to convince me that this is the right computer. I don't want to order these. I don't like them. They're not what I want. We should get an external consultant or have someone else. And this goes back to something you keep impressing on me, which I don't know why it keeps coming up to me. The nature of, as CST, we don't want to tell other people how to do things. We want people to come to us if they need help. Brennan sought out this external consultation from Alex and Surat without any of my, I didn't need him to, I don't need to be told.
Daniel, hold on, back up for a second. I just looked back and I gave you the permission to go ahead and order what you wanted on Monday, November 30th. I had the email on November 30th.
Yeah, I was still talking with Brendan.
To order what you wanted. You just said you just said that my time frame was off, and that's not exactly correct.
Well, no, what I mean to say.
Permission on Monday night. I gave you permission on Monday night, November 30th, to order what you wanted.
But Thursday is when me and you met, and this is what I'm trying to clarify. If you listen to the story I'm telling, so you gave me that permission on Monday for sure. And then I met with Brendan on Wednesday to go over it once more to make sure I was hoping he would be collaborative. and give me feedback and say,
well, he did give you feedback.
His feedback was no.
Well, but you didn't like the feedback.
No, it's not that
you're entitled to not like it.
It's not.
He gave you feedback.
The feedback I was hoping for was more like, this model might be better, or this much memory might be better, or look at this option. It wasn't feedback to me. And forgive me, I feel like, again, so here you're defending Brendan. You're not able to see my side.
No.
It wasn't feedback that was helpful. It wasn't helpful. It was negative. It was just very negative. And then he tried to set up this meeting with Surratt. And at that point, I was like, so this is why I'm very confused as to why this is a problem. This is exactly what happened in my life. On Wednesday, I had an hour meeting with Brendan to try to decide, based on you saying Monday that I could make the decision. On Wednesday, I was like, Brendan, here's the decision. Let me know if you think, we should get this much memory or this kind of monitor or this kind of setup. He didn't want to even work with me on that model. So then he set up that meeting. Thursday, I met with you.
And when you say he didn't want to work with you, how did that go? He said, I think we should reach out to other people.
But here's what I'm trying to tell you. Then Thursday, I met with you, right? Between him reaching out to other people. So Thursday, I met with you and you were like, you can move ahead. Right? That's what you said Thursday.
I didn't know you had a meeting set. I had no idea you had.
It didn't come up yet. It hadn't been decided yet fully. It was. So here's where I don't know. I didn't bring up the idea to have a meeting with Surratt or anybody. He suddenly made that necessary, and this is where.
When? During your meeting on Wednesday?
Over the course of between Wednesday and Friday is when the meeting got arranged. But when our meeting happened in between.
No. When did Brendan say, I think it would be good for him to meet? I think it would be good to meet with Surratt. When did he say that?
He said it on Wednesday. Okay. But we didn't set up a meeting yet. It didn't.
I know. But your last interaction with Brendan on Wednesday was that, let's go ahead and meet with Surratt.
It was begrudgingly. It was again.
It doesn't matter. So your last communication with Brendan was to set up a meeting with Surratt.
That is, and then let me please tell you the story, Sami. So I'm trying to say what happened. So Thursday I met with you. You said that I should be able to move ahead. I responded to. Please listen to me.
I just want you, since you're bringing my comment into this, I just want to clarify. I was making that what I said to you is, you didn't need to meet with him on Wednesday because I gave you the okay to make a selection on Monday.
I know.
I had no idea what the specifics were of your meeting on Wednesday. And I also had no idea that you had agreed to reaching out to anybody else.
Well,
I was simply trying to impart to you that when I gave you permission on Monday, you had the freedom to do what you wanted. That's all I was saying to you. Had I known that you had a meeting set up with other people or had agreed to that, I would have said, well, look, you kind of opened the door now. You've asked for input from Brendan, and the fact that you don't like the input, well, then I guess that's a lesson learned. That if you're going to elicit input from people, you may not hear you may not hear things that you didn't want to hear.
I find it frightening that this is what you're saying, because what I'm trying to communicate to you, and it's falling on deaf ears, is that it's not an issue of me liking Brendan's input. It's that his input is constantly negative and overwhelmingly not supportive. And that's a problem for me. And that's a real problem. I'm telling you, it's not my fault.
That this happened. Okay, I still haven't heard the facts here on how this meeting, how, and we'll come back to this idea of being unsupported. But
by Brendan specifically, not anybody else. Just to clarify.
Actually, no, but this is also a theme, though, because this is what you said to me about Catherine.
Well, that's not inaccurate.
Or appreciative. You use the term supportive and appreciative. She wasn't appreciative or supportive. You weren't getting that type of positive feedback from her. And now I'm hearing this again. But what I'm more concerned about is the communication breakdown. So I'm trying to figure out where that happened.
I'm telling you.
You left a meeting. So you left a meeting with Brendan on Wednesday, saying begrudgingly, okay, we'll meet and I'll get that other input. So then what happened? Then you and I met, so what? So said you could, but I said you could on Monday. Nothing changed from what I said to you Wednesday and Monday. I had given you permission on Monday. So then what happened? You went and you decided to make a decision?
I replied to an email that Brennan sent to Sarat and Alex, and I said, I'm unavailable to meet tomorrow because I wasn't available to meet. Brennan arranged a meeting very quickly without my input as to the exact timing. He just did it, and that's fine because I want to be supportive of Brennan. But on Thursday, I replied and said, I'm not available for this meeting on Friday. It was too short of notice, and I said I'd be happy to discuss this next week. And then on Friday, I met with Penelope. She and I agreed that we had come to a good decision. That's when the email that CC'd Brennan and you and had Adam's feedback went out. So it was on Friday in the morning. I confirmed with him that, and I had already confirmed on Thursday that I was not available for the meeting on Friday. And on Friday morning, I confirmed that, despite I'd love to meet with Alex and Sarat, I need to be able to move forward on this course in the timeline we have based on my conversation with you, which I thought was very supportive from you. You were like, we want to get these ordered and get them set up because we have this in this timeline for the second week of January. We want to get them out. So by that point, I was moving forward with that conversation strand that I had developed with you. And frankly, like I had said, I am not prepared to continually be blamed if I can't speak to Brendan, without him berating me about my opinion for an hour. So I don't know what to tell you about that. But he was not receptive at all. I mean, it's one thing to have an opinion. It's another to make another person feel like their opinion is completely wrong. I mean, that's not what I was doing to him. I was proposing something and he wasn't coming up with an alternative.
Dana, I just want to get back to the time frame here. So you on Thursday said you couldn't make the meeting on Friday, but you'd be happy to meet this week with them when you're available. But then you sent out an email on Friday saying the decision was made.
I can still meet with them about computing. We can still have them consult with us on our computing needs. This class is a very specific thing to me.
But here's where I'm trying to understand where both of you are where there's these miscommunications are coming up. So he thought he was making his understanding was he was making a meeting to have them consult on the purchase. And so he set up a meeting, you couldn't make the meeting, said you could meet next week, and then you sent an email saying the decision's been made. According to him, he wrote to you and you didn't write back about that after that. From his perspective, you enlisted his opinion. He was setting up a meeting, which you agreed to, whether it's begrudgingly or not, and then sent out an announcement that it was done and with no explanation to him, without canceling or, at least a conversation of, I know you wanted to bring Sarat and Alex into it, but I need to make this decision now.
I said to him on Thursday that I couldn't make the meeting on Friday. I emailed that to him and Sarat, and I said I'd be happy to talk again next week. He got back to me on Friday, you're right, saying that he was confused about which or what to do, and I didn't get back to him right away. And I frankly, so I have been very timely about all of my activities. I have been very consistently on a good schedule. I've been performing, I believe, very well. And so on Friday, I was working with Laura to get her technology set up for her shoot. And I was working with Penelope to develop this class. And I had been setting up the scheduling for the course with the faculty. And it was not immediately my ability to have a sudden shift in priority to Brennan's need to have an external consultant tell me what computers we need for our course. I had said I tried to cancel it on Thursday.
Daniel, I understand that, and you're in a position to make that decision. You certainly I don't want to bring anyone else in.
He doesn't listen.
You can do that. Or
He doesn't hear me when I say things. So that's been the ongoing problem. He doesn't.
Daniel, you agreed, whether it was begrudgingly or not, you agreed that he could go ahead and set up a meeting with Sarat and Alex. And then you went and made the decision before that meeting took place.
The decision was made before that meeting took place already. I appreciate.
Okay.
The decision had been. This is what Brennan has not been. This is what I'm trying to tell you. So this is what happened also with the please listen to me. This is what happened with the technology rental stuff too. I can tell Brendan, here's a list of stuff that we're going to put in the kit. For some reason, he still asks me several times afterwards, exactly what do you want in the kit? If I make a decision, he always denies my decision enough to not even hear the fact that I've made it. So if I say, this is the computer I want to order, he'll ignore that I say that because he'll tell me he wants something else, and it won't matter that I said what I said. And I'm sorry, but it's come up and it's a problem, and it's not my problem because I don't understand how. I asked him to send me a Raspberry Pi kit. He told me, "Are you sure you want me to send you a Raspberry Pi kit?"
I understand that. And I spoke to him about that, and I told him that was problematic.
Well, so you have experience with this, I think, with him.
I talked to him. Well, I see issues on both sides, is what I see.
Okay, but
and I'm having a hard time with the fact that you're not able to take any responsibility with this meeting situation. You did agree, albeit begrudgingly, to have a meeting with Sarat and Alex. What would be very reasonable to expect was about a decision on the computers.
And I still can have feedback from them.
And then sent out an email saying the decision was made to someone who you just reached out to the day before, or whatever, on Wednesday, to say, I would like your input, and then make the decision without any sort of other heads up about the meeting.
Sammy,
would be very off-putting. I would see that as off-putting.
This is where
missing there.
This is what we're missing. This is what we're missing. So this is the missing part. That what I was trying to communicate, and I believe that message makes this clear as well, is that I would like to order a mini PC. This is what I kept saying to Brendan. He kept saying, I don't want to order a mini PC. And I said, this is the best thing for the budget. But within that, we can still have Alex and Sarat make recommendations for RAM, storage, options for graphics cards, options for other things. So that's all I was trying to say. That the decision about the type of machine, I am not, based on conversation with Adam and you and Penelope, I'm not gonna. He kept going from wanting to get full size PCs to getting laptops, and I it wasn't an option for me to consider those two options because one's not affordable and one is too big. So I arrived at a very deliberate and tested. I spent the last week testing the mini PC type, and there are different iterations of that. So there's different models. So this is what I did, and I apologize if I did it somehow wrong. But on Thursday, I said to Brennan and Sarat and Alex, I can't meet tomorrow, let's meet next week. That does not mean I did not want to meet this week. I don't know why he went on and had the meeting anyway. The email I sent was very clear. It said, let's reschedule for sometime next week. It didn't say, you guys should meet without me. So that was Brennan's own misinterpretation. And I was very clear in what I said in the email. And in the other email that you were CC'd on, I said, I'm open to suggestions for other things like storage type, etc. So I am still available. I'm still happy to have someone consult on building these. But when it comes down to the type of machine, we've come to a good general decision that we like. Everybody seems to like the nukes. So except Brendan, but there's still questions there. So that's all.
For you certainly made a very reasonable and informative decision, and you are in a position to make that decision. And I appreciate the time and testing you put in. All I'm focusing on is the interpersonal piece here of the fact that, I think when you say you begrudgingly agreed to have the input, that's problematic right there, Daniel, because if you're agreeing to something that you really don't want to do, then there's going to be challenges down the road, and that's exactly what happened here. You really needed to make your decision, and yet we still have this lagging, input from other people that you really didn't want to have.
Well,
there's sort of a and I also appreciate that you wanted to reach out to Brendan to have buy-in and his input, approval, whatever, and that unfortunately he didn't give you the input that you had hoped for. But from his perspective, so I can understand where you're at with all of that. But what I'm trying to get you to understand is sometimes there's not, everybody can be a little bit happy and a little bit unhappy with how things are going. And right now, from Brendan's perspective, he went and set up a meeting thinking that it was going to be about this purchase. And then you basically announced that the purchase was set, and he had a meeting set up.
I also will tell you, I apologize, but I assumed you were meeting with him on Thursday. I figured it would come up that you were backing my decision making on this in your meeting with him. And between our meeting
none
and
of this has to do with that. None of this has to do with the approval. It has to do with the way that it transpired with this meeting. He made a suggestion that you get input from these other people. He offered to make the appointment. He's put down a potential.
And I'm telling you that
it didn't work, and it's fine that it didn't work for you. That the time was no good.
And I canceled it, and he didn't get it. He didn't get it. So if I said I can send you the email on Thursday. I can't make this meeting. Let's do it another time.
Right.
And I still,
which would lead people to think that there's going to be discussion about the computer.
And the email I sent Friday says there's still discussion. There's still discussion about memory and storage, and this is the miscommunication there.
So I don't think it's clear. I would not think that this is clear that the discussion that you were supposed to have with Sarat and Alex, that somehow this was still even relevant given your decision, because I think when he reached out to Sarat and Alex, it was with the idea of we want to make this purchase and want input on the purchase. So I think it's important to just step back for a second and think that the communication between the two of you can actually be more important than the decision itself or anything else. Because what's happening here is that you feel upset by his response to you, which I understand. You're upset by the fact that you've done all of this due diligence and you feel it's not being understood or appreciated, which I understand. But from his perspective, he tried to come up with a satisfactory option here to have the input from folks, took the step of trying to set things up, got an email saying, let's have the meeting next week, and then an email goes out saying the decision, from his perspective, that the decision is made. He said he tried reaching out to you about this and didn't hear back. So from his perspective, he's heard that he was willing and able to have ongoing discussions and felt that you basically undermined that via email after he had, because then he felt embarrassed by the fact that he was set up to meet with Sarat and then felt like, what did we reach out for? That it impacts his relationship with people from another office.
Well, I tried to reschedule that meeting into a time. So I saw the meeting you scheduled on Friday for PC management today. I thought things would come up today, like we would discuss. So we like this general idea of a mini PC. We can meet with these people. I did not know they met. I thought that I definitely canceled the meeting. I definitely said I can't make it. Let's reschedule. So sometimes, look, this in part, I'll attribute it in part to virtual stuff, because if we were in person, it would have gotten verbalized, or if we didn't have to set up a meeting to discuss something, maybe things would get more iterative. But I apologize for having this feeling, and I apologize that I feel like you're not receptive to it. but so when Brendan had the meeting with me on Wednesday for an hour, and he was unsupportive of my thinking, so much so that it was negative. It was, no matter what you say, is his exact words, no matter what you say, I'm not going to like this idea, is what he said, no matter how I defend it. So if that's the way...
You're saying he said that?
He said that, yeah.
He said that?
Yes, he said...
Tell me what he said.
He said, it does not matter what you can't convince me that you want the mini PCs are a good purchase. No matter what you say, I'm not going to be convinced. So I was making the argument that they're portable and they're more modular and they're a better long-term investment than laptops, and because the keyboards, can be replaced instead of get dirty, and the monitors might break. He didn't care. None of it mattered. And that's, how he is. He's stubborn sometimes, and he wasn't listening.
Do you know what he wanted? I'm just curious. I'm just curious. Do you know what he wants?
This I'm happy we're getting here. So this is what I was very confused by. He didn't know what he wanted. No. So that's why it wasn't working. He wasn't giving me an alternative. Like I was saying, we wanted a less than $1,200 computer. This is exactly the conversation. I said, if you can recommend an under $1,200 laptop that's as good as this mini PC, let me know. And he's like, I cannot. So I was like, well, you cannot, because it doesn't exist, because with the pricing we're looking at, this is really the best decision. And it didn't matter to him. And then he went ahead and he wanted to get this consultation. And I was like, okay, if you want to, but then, the next thing I know, I met with you and you said, you get to make the decision. We need to move ahead fast. So then...
No.
Something to that effect.
I think you are Daniel, I'm part of this too. You're mischaracterizing that. I did not say go ahead and move ahead because we're under pressure. I did not realize at that time that you had agreed to a meeting with other people. What I said to you was, you didn't have to reach out to Brendan for the meeting you had on Wednesday. I had already given the okay for you to make a decision.
I know we're stuck on this.
To bring Brendan,
we're stuck on this, but I just want to pull us off it because, like the begrudging thing. So Brendan basically didn't ask me my opinion on setting up a meeting. It wasn't even like that. He just said, I'm going to set up a meeting with Sarat and Alex. So, for what it's worth, I tried to cancel the meeting on Thursday when I had a meeting with you because I tried to delay it and get feedback on specifics. But frankly, I was doing my best, okay? I'm doing my best here. I'm not trying to cause these problems. I cannot...
But you did agree to a meeting.
It's not like that.
Originally or not,
I didn't agree to it. He set it up. He just did it. He said, I'll do it. So at that point, I had talked to him already for an hour about him saying no to me, and I was fried.
So, but he set it up, and whether you agreed, didn't agree, you sent an email that said, I can't make it, but I'd be happy to meet next week.
Which is still true.
That is agreement to have a meeting, and then you sent the email on Friday saying the decision's made. I understand that the nuance of you feel there's still decisions to be made. I understand that.
That's true.
You.
Yeah.
I understand that. But I'm asking you to understand how the progression of things with this particular interaction could be reasonably understood as you've reached out to me for input. My input is we should meet with other experts. I've set up a meeting. You have said, okay, I can't make that meeting, but I'll make it next week, and then boom, the decision's been made. That is a reasonable interpretation. That's all I'm saying to you, that it would behoove you to understand your feelings of anger right now and frustration, and those are completely understandable, and I appreciate that. But you also need to put yourself in the shoes of the other party to say that they could reasonably be hurt and upset also because of the way that transpired.
And that is not something I'm going to deny. But what I will say, this goes back to Joe. So I didn't mean to get Joe involved in this. What I did need to know from Joe, and this is where, if we're not having these meetings together, then having them in isolated ways where I get someone's voice. That's all that was about. With Joe, it was so these decisions are being made in real time because the order has to go through and stuff then has to get delivered somewhere, and someone has to be managing something, and we're having that meeting today about that. So all I wanted to talk to Joe about, and I'm flabbergasted that a negative reaction. I don't understand that, because he seemed very collegial, and I was very collegial, and I wasn't negative about Brendan. I was negative about the decision-making dynamic, which is real, and that is all there was to that. That it was, we discussed this ourselves, me and you, and this is all that came up again with Joe, is that, me and the faculty related have come up with a plan. Brendan has not been supportive of the plan. Okay, so then no matter what, I just need to move forward, and I wanted to see if Joe was behind the idea of the computers coming directly to me and having them go out from me, or if we wanted them to go to Brendan and go out from Brendan. And I needed his assessment of that before meeting with you tonight, because I wanted to kind of have a sense what he thought in terms of the order, because, listing the address on the order, all that stuff is details that he's involved in, and I just wanted his feedback on the order process. And also the second question was just following up on, him getting the order, and then he'll ask you to approve it to make sure that the budget's right because of all those numbers being big and stuff. And I didn't mean to bring him in any way that made him uncomfortable. I just wanted to have his thoughts on the best practice for managing equipment, whether it's in some cases course-related equipment, or in some cases more studio lab centric equipment. This is a case where it's kind of both, but that's all I mean, is that, that's all I was asking Joe.
If I sent an email inviting you and Brendan to discuss the management of this, and I didn't invite Joe. So wouldn't you think that if Joe were a voice that should be involved in this, I would have invited him?
I mean, whether or not you would have invited him, I had to ask him practical questions for my own concern that I needed to know about shipping of equipment. And this has to do simply with prime orders, where they go, that I wanted to know ahead of time before the meeting. It has nothing to do with him being at the meeting. It has to do with me understanding stuff generally,
But he indicated to me that you encouraged him, that you wanted him at the meeting.
That is not, this is where things get flipped around. This is not what happened at all. And Joe will probably agree with me. This is not what was happening at all. Joe said, when I brought up the question of, this is the very distinct question, how do orders differ when they're course related or just studio lab related? What's our process for managing equipment when it's maybe just for a course? Because, this came up with Andrea's course. The equipment Brendan didn't even see the equipment order for that. It went straight to Andrea. She sent it right to the students. That's fine. That's what happened. But basically that was the question to Joe. And he was like, well, I think me and you and Sami should have a meeting about this and see what we all think. And I was like, well, I'm meeting with Sami and Brendan later today. This is all that happened, Sami, organically. That is the conversation that happened. He proposed that we should have a meeting to come to a conclusion about the difference between course-related acquisitions and studio lab-related acquisitions is all. So, I did not try to get him into the meeting. I mentioned it as an option, considering he proposed that the three of us have a meeting about that, which is fine. But he also didn't have time because his wife is ill. So I said, no worries. All I said, I didn't say I'm going to use you as a kind of, part of my argument. I just said, based on what you've said, Joe, I think, right, it makes sense to just have the equipment, in this case, managed by me for this course, because it's a tight timeline.
Can you understand from Joe's position how he might have felt that you were, I don't, pressure is too harsh a word, but encouraging him to take your side on this?
He took my side. I didn't pressure him, so I can't understand that.
That's not what I asked. Okay, that's not what I asked. I asked if you can understand that how Joe could interpret your discussion as me as pressuring him to take a side.
Sami, you have to understand, I'm new here, so I'm learning how things work. It's not a question of a side, it's a question of how should we do it. And I'm asking people who I assume have experience or a good judgment. That's all. It wasn't an argument. It was a, what do you think normally? How would equipment be managed? What should we do in this case? And the verdict was that because it's course related, that was his verdict, and it was something that I am learning whether or not we want it to be true. Course related equipment can be somehow managed in this virtual setting without too much of Brennan's. I mean, this is the issue, right? In real life, I mean, not a not virtual setting, this wouldn't be an issue. It would come to the studio lab, me and Brennan would both manage it.
That's right.
But this is
That's
a question,
right.
this is a question I had being new. It wasn't a side oriented thing.
That's why we're meeting today. This is exactly what we're meeting on today, is to discuss this, you, me, and Brendan, about what makes sense for this. Daniel, I feel like where we're having challenges is I've simply been trying to get you to see outside of your own defending where the other person might have their perspective too. And Joe is someone who is incredibly not someone Joe has never come to me and asked for help with a situation. I'm asking you to understand, can you at least understand from his position where he might have felt uncomfortable that you were, first of all, saying something negative about a colleague, and then when you felt he was, quote, on your side or holding your position, that you wanted him to voice that in a meeting. That's how he interpreted it.
I understand this, and I can, well,
okay,
but
okay, good. That's all I'm asking.
But I don't understand why it's.
You can understand that.
But I don't understand why it's why I'm suddenly a problem for it. I'm learning how things work, and I have to ask people what they think, and in order to learn. And in this case, it was about a crime-related order, and it is coming out of a conflict that's real, and it's not a conflict that necessarily. I wouldn't say I went out of my way to say negative things. I would say that what I said was, in terms of equipment management, this decision, I feel I would like to simply have a better. I can't look. Whether or not we need to go back to that or not, I'm trying to tell you, and I've been trying to tell you this for a long time, and I'm not sure. So Brennan and I don't get along, and I'm sorry for that, and I wish it wasn't the way it is, and I wish I got along with him, but I have felt bullied. I have felt ignored, like if I can say things and they're not even heard. So I understand you say what you say about, can I empathize and imagine someone else's position? Can you understand my position when I'm trying to figure out what computer to order for a class, and my colleague says, I don't want that no matter what you say, I'm going to set a meeting tomorrow, we have to have a consultation by external people. I don't really want any of that, but I want to support him, so I kind of say, well, okay. Then I'm just trying to make stuff work as I go along, okay? But it's very hard to make stuff work when someone ignores your opinion. And so, yeah, I mean, that wasn't the best. I agree, the way everything worked out with that meeting. But I certainly didn't, I wasn't the architect of the problem. It was the architect was someone who refused to listen to a colleague, me. I was listening to Adam and Penelope and you and giving feedback to Brendan, and he didn't care. So he wanted to set up a consultation, and that's how it went. But I'm sorry if I'm not doing better at this. I don't know how to do better with the Brendan situation. He has not made it an option. Last time we spoke about this, I asked you to try to encourage him to be more open-minded. He has not been more open-minded. He is very closed-minded about everything I say. So that's all. I want his opinion, but I don't want him to change everything, about the need. The need is, here's a question, Brendan. Give me some thoughts. It's not, I'm not asking him to deny the question being valid. So I apologize if I certainly would want to know if I should apologize to Joe.
I just think in terms of Joe, I mean, he's not somebody. He's not upset or he's not angry. He's uncomfortable. That's the term I would use. He was uncomfortable, and he wanted me to know that. So whether that warrants an apology, that's your call. But I wanted you to understand where he was.
Well, the uncomfortableness, it seems like it came out of a question that is hard to know ahead of time, which isn't about siding with a colleague. It's about what's the most practical way to get equipment shipped and where to. That's what I needed his side on, is all. And whether or not his side is valid or not, I mean, as far as, I'm not going to use it to support an argument. I'm not making an argument. It's just a matter of like shipping the stuff. Where do you think it should go?
I think his interpretation was it was an argument. I mean, we're meeting on this today, so there really didn't have to be any, sort of pre-homework done. We're going to discuss what makes sense today, you, me, and Brendan. But I think from Joe's perspective, hearing you just, communicate about Brendan as being negative and whatever other word it was.
It wasn't negative. I said it was difficult. I said, this is what I tried to very democratically say. I said it was difficult working collaboratively in a virtual setting and that it wasn't ultimately worth it. That in a physical setting, it would have been much more dynamic for me and Brendan to have our roles work out. Like, it would make more sense. But when we're virtual, like for me to, tell him how to set up a computer over the internet when he's doing it it's just not worth it for that level of, I might as well just manage the equipment myself is all. That was all that was about. So I'm sorry if that got miscommunicated. It's very...
What he communicated to me is that you indicated that Brendan is being very controlling.
Well, yeah, he is.
Okay, so then the question is, from Joe's perspective, that put Joe in a very awkward position of hearing you say something negative about a colleague. That alone in itself, Joe was feeling, why am I hearing, that's speaking negatively about a colleague to him. Right? You could, if this were not about garnering his position or his backing, you could have just said, hey, Joe, I just wanted to find out for a course, what's the most common way of doing X? But that's not what transpired. From Joe's perspective, you framed this in a conflict between you and Brendan.
I attempted to say that and that is a challenge that I brought up with you. So that's something that I have tried to bring to you.
But I'm the manager. I'm the manager here. That's Joe. Joe is not. I mean, why would Joe be involved in that?
I apologize I apologize. Look, Sami, Brendan's controlling, bullying behavior of me and disagreeable dynamic has hurt me. Has made this job hard. So I'm trying, and I apologize if my experience of the difficulty isn't something that I can reconcile, but I certainly don't know. I don't want to further complicate it because I don't think it's worth it. I think that an element of the complexity is the virtual setting, and therefore we're not going to resolve it by talking, me and Brendan. Like, it's just, to me, there's an inherent complexity that's what I broached in a way to Joe also, that, it's hard for me to manage this virtual job sharing where, Brennan's job would be more practical if he had the actual facility to manage. And then that's all the other side of it is that, yeah, I apologize if I wouldn't say I badmouthed Brendan. I just said that at times this has been complicated because I feel like it's being controlled by someone and I don't have a voice. My voice keeps getting ignored. So that's fine. I mean, Sammy, I've been trying really hard to work to do this job well. I feel like I'm doing the job really well most of the time. And I feel like sometimes I don't know how to tell you that, I don't know what to do to please you. I really don't, because I have worked so hard. Me and Penelope get along great, for example. I have not felt like I've had any problems with Penelope. Like, we keep having really good meetings. But the meetings I had with Catherine and the meetings I had with Brennan were very negative. And they weren't, I don't know what to tell you. I did such a great job on that project for Catherine. And I'm doing so much research to get this computer, the right computer for the class. And I'm just trying to get Brennan's feedback. So I'm doing what I can. I honestly believe that. I honestly do believe that. And I'm not denying that I want to work better and work harder. But I do lose track of how to. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I appreciate that, Daniel. So today, what I'm hoping we'll get accomplished this afternoon is to just discuss the nuts and bolts of the decision of where the computers are going to be sent and who's going to be preparing them for the course.
And what do you think? Do you want to just wait till later to talk about that then? Yeah.
Yeah, because I honestly don't know all of the different pieces that need to be considered for that. I want you comfortable, because the course, having everything prepared in time for the course, is getting the job done is my priority. So we will, I'd like to hear from both of you what you feel should be done. There's no question anymore in terms of what we're ordering. The only question I did have is you wrote 18 in that email, and I had thought we were going a little bit higher.
Well, we have one.
18. Okay.
We have one already, so we have 19. So we could order 19, but I said 18 in the email because we already had one. And I figured we might order another one, like as a test that Penelope would get, but that didn't get written about. So
well, I had written that back to you. I had thought 20 was the good number because that would give us the extra, and in case anything was not working, whatever it does, we can. That's fine.
We have 19. Yeah.
20.
Okay.
So at any rate, that decision's made. However you want things done. The one thing I still need, which I think I wrote, is that I just want to understand what exactly is one full setup for a student, what the cost per seat is, and what's involved in that. And whenever you have that, that'll be great. And then we'll get the order set for Joe. And today we'll decide, me, and Brendan will decide where they're going to get shipped to and what the best way to have them, delivered or shipped to students will be.
Yeah.
And we'll try to get that worked out today.
That was something I didn't understand.
To some extent, we're building this plane as we're flying it because we're not going to know where all the students are going to be until fairly late, which is why I figured if at least we had the sets, completed by the second week of January, that would be great because then even if they're being shipped somewhere, the students should have them. So,
Sammy,
as is typically the case, my only priority is just getting the job done and making sure that we're well prepared.
And I do want to just say thank you for that, and your support has been appreciated, and your feedback is appreciated. And it's not that I am unwelcoming feedback, and I think things have gotten a little screwy with some thinking sometimes, not on your end, but in general. Like, I think I've tried to be really receptive to feedback, but there's only so much that one can be. And I should just say in closing that, I hope that if you think that I'm better suited to look for, a different position, I would hope that you would give me that feedback so that I did start that process. I have been.
You did what? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
So that I would start that process of looking for a different position, if you think that I should do that, because I feel at times I'm working really hard, but when I get these calls like this, they completely take over my whole sense of feeling like I'm part of the team. I didn't think that my negotiation of these last few situations was really negative. I did my best. and that's all. But I need to know from you as a manager, if this isn't going to work for some reason, if you don't think it's working, then I would appreciate knowing that, in real time. I mean, I've been really happy at this job, but these things, I don't know how to do better. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then that's something that I need to work on, is helping to try to facilitate these things going better. So I will continue to work on that, and I will continue to do my best at trying to support you, which, whether it comes across that way or not, that is very, very much what I've tried to do from day one, or even before day one.
It comes across that way, and I know that that's true before day one. But I just need to say that when I hear these things, like 3 colleagues have said negative things, and you say it in such a way, that makes me feel like I should look for another job.
It's not about saying negative things, Daniel. It's about having had these situations where I have had to intervene with 3 people. That we have to look at together as something that is, worth examining. It's something that's worth examining, if for nothing else, to help us each become better at what we do. I mean, anytime if I'm in a job and someone says to me, Sami, so 3 situations have now arisen with 3 people. As hard as that is for me to hear, I need to reflect and say, well, maybe I need to think about why, or, what I could be doing better with the situation.
And
it's very hard to hear, but that's what that is.
And all I can try to say about this is that, as much as you want to say that you're getting feedback about me, I'm trying to be the one telling you, and I don't know if this is something you can hear, but those colleagues, well, not Joe, but Brendan and Catherine, have been difficult. So that's all. And whether or not, for example, Penelope and Brendan don't meet every week, twice a week, so you're not getting the same feedback. Brendan doesn't really, as far as I know, meet with anybody twice a week. So, and then working with Catherine was, I thought, good at the end of the day, but, we are coming from different backgrounds. But anyway, that's all. So, I want to succeed in this job, and I couldn't be more excited about this class. I think Sigrid got back to me today. This motion tracking camera is going to be fantastic. We're going to be able to do just what Naomi wants and even more. So, I'm really excited about Penelope and me collaborating on that. So I'm really happy about a lot of stuff, but I do want to work with you on the Studio Lab dynamic for sure, as a basic.
As do I.
Okay.
As do I. Okay, I'm late for my 1:30, Daniel. I have to go.
Thanks,
see you
Sami.
later.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Thanks very much. Bye.